Well, it goes way back before I started. I started here in 1967 as a marshman, and there was lots of marshmen around the Broads. They'd either use a meg or they use the old-fashioned scythe, very similar to this one. That's an old piece of wood cut out of the marsh, an alder. You go down the dyke in the winter time when all the leaf is off, and you see how it's grown in the dyke, and you see how you need the bends in it. And then this is called a boil, and that's called a pricker. This is set up really for reed cutting, and that catches all the reed as you swing aside. But traditionally this is the way that I started at How Hill in '67, and it took me a long while to learn, because oftentimes you cut reed high, 6 or 8 inches high, you'll whip it and break it in the neck, and you have to go home and mend it. So you learn by your mistakes. Hard work, winter, reed cutting. I used to come home occasionally and think, oh, I've got to go tomorrow morning and mend the scythe and go back. But in the finish, after probably about 2.5 years, I'd be left behind with the old man when he was mowing sedge. He would mow front, and I used to be about 20 yards behind him, try to catch him up. But you gradually learn, and most of the old boys were kind old boys. They were very sort of caring, looked after you, and he was an excellent man regarding knowledge. He knew every water level on the How Hill estate, and that was his job really. You know, I mean, going back to the early days, reed was sold by the fathom. A fathom of reed was 5 or 6 bunches, which meant when they were stood up they had to measure 6 foot around the bonds. Fishermen used to cut reed. When it was rough out to sea and they couldn't go fishing, they'd come back into the Broads and cut reed. And then it's quiet down again. I mean, I've got all the old leather boots of years ago. Huge boots. I mean, if you were to see them, amazing. Big soles that thick. But they were fishermen's boots, but as I say, they're used in the marshes, all leather boots. All them little jobs were done. They done with hodders, shore knives, crumbs, didles, all them old tools, which I've collected. These are quite old, about 100 years old. Old diking tools made by the Marshman, a piece of wood cut out of the marsh, called slubbers, mud slops. And they used to shore the dikes up every 20 yards, get most of the water out, and go in the bottom of the dikes and scoop the mud out. And they're called slubbers, mud slops. You don't force yourself, you just let the side do the work. Freedom. The freedom. I like the old ways. I think the old ways are still very good ways of managing. I think there won't be many people do it, because most people revert to the cutters and things like that. But there's something romantic about swinging the scythe and doing things, boating it out with a little punt, quanting down the dikes. The early days we would have boats called reed lighters, which will hold about 300 bundles of reed. We used to stack them on there and quant them down a river or row them. Today you have an engine, don't you? So, but everything was peaceful. And you have these little marsh boats, these tiny ones, which will hold about 100 bundles of reed, and the same with sedge. Again, you'd quant that down the dike, and it looked picturesque really. They had to get the reed from the centre of the marsh out onto the staith with the materials they cut. So they used boats. A reed lighter is a flat bottom boat, and you can pull it on a foot of water. It's very flat bottom. It's a fascinating job being a marshman really.